All right. Hello, everyone. This is Anna Lee Kruger, the owner of Care Rights Incorporated. We help families across the United States develop their aging plan. Where are you going to live now? Where are you going to live down the road? If you need care, who's going to provide the care and who's going to pay for the care, or how is that care going to get paid? We work with a plethora of professionals in our resources that we refer our clients to. And who I have on as a guest today is attorney Brad Gilbraith in Naples, Florida. And I'd like to introduce Brad. And today we're going to talk about estate planning and what is estate planning and why is it important to plan ahead from a legal perspective, and what happens if you don't have your estate documents in order. Okay? All right. So Brad, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Annalee. I'm Brad Gilbraith. I'm the managing attorney of Gilbraith PLLC. We have offices in Naples, Florida, and in Indianapolis. We really practice kind of throughout the state of Florida and throughout the state of Indiana. We're fortunate that a lot of people are up to date technologically, so we're able to reach out a little bit from just here locally. My background is I was a CPA before going back to law school, so I tend to work with people who have some more complicated issues in their estate plan instead of just simple things. Just generally speaking, people with more complicated issues, whether that's ethical concerns, business succession issues, tax issues, or just complication from a second marriage or something like that. So that's really what I do.
Great. Can you clarify a little bit, what is an estate plan?
Yeah, certainly we all have an estate plan. If we don't actually have anything on paper, whatever state you are from provides us an estate plan for you. And that estate plan isn't necessarily what you would choose if you had the option to sit down and actually work on an estate plan. As a result, everyone really needs an estate plan. Estate plans can basically take two forms, will-based estate planning or trust-based estate planning. When you have a will-based estate plan, it requires a probate. And a lot of us have heard that terminology, a probate. Not everybody knows what probate means, but it's really the court process of a judge getting involved to make sure that the assets go to the right people as stated in the will. A lot of people don't really feel that they need that. They've got trustworthy people, trustworthy advisors, trustworthy trustees. That's the name, trustee. And so they don't feel that they need a judge watching over everything. They've got the right people on board. And so when that's the case, people tend to avoid using wills and instead do trust planning. The same things that can be done through a will can be done through a trust. The real major benefit is if done properly, a trust can avoid that probate process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we always hear about the horrors of someone going into probate. That's not what you want to be.
Yeah, the fact is that the probate expenses themselves aren't all that bad. What the problem is the attorney's fees. And as an attorney, I'll tell you that when I have to do a lot of extra work to shuffle paper, it may not be value added at all. It's just simply shuffling paper to get the right authority with the right people and then reporting back to the court about exactly what's been done. That just takes longer than if we were able to avoid that. So in most instances, I tell people that they're best off doing trust-based planning instead of will-based planning so that they can avoid probate.
Sure. And I know that as a family advisor, helping families with aging loved ones, I always get the same question, well, when is the time to put a plan together? So when's a good time to put your legal plans in order?
Well, the simple answer is you want it together before you become disabled or die. Mm-hmm. The problem is we never know exactly when that's going to be. So the more proactive you are, the easier it is to do. Also, I'll tell you, doing estate planning for someone who doesn't need it probably for decades is easy. It's easy to make these hypothetical decisions. It's much harder when it all becomes a reality and you have a terminal illness or or even worse, you have an illness that causes you to be unable to do your planning. So I always advise people to do the planning and then just keep it up to date through the years. Once you've done it, if you keep it up to date, you never have to toss it out the window and start over again. If you just continue to maintain it, making just minor modifications from time to time to keep it up to date, then we know that it's going to be up to date and it's going to work properly when you actually need it. And since we never know when that is, it's best to be prepared from the beginning.
Right. And then as far as, one thing that I do with my clients is we review, or they review, their own documents, right? Because I'm nationwide, so I don't look at everyone's documents. And so if they say that they have their living will or their power of attorney for healthcare or financial POA in order, I always ask them to double check to make sure that the person that they named 20 years ago is still alive and is still able and willing, and that they have a relationship still with that person, so that if the time comes when they become incapacitated, whether it's a stroke or dementia progression or Parkinson's, whatever happens to them, they at least have up-to-date documents. One of the questions I get too is, well, I have documents from Michigan. Does that help me down here in Florida? Can you take a second to address that too?
Yeah, I'll address kind of both of the things that you just mentioned. First, in terms of reviewing documents, I think you're right. The easiest thing for them to do is to look to see that the people they've named are the appropriate people. The difficulty with that sometimes is the law can change, and simply reviewing doesn't necessarily tell you that the document is still going to work as intended. So a perfect example of that, I don't remember what year HIPAA was passed. It was probably, I don't know, late 1990s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
But you might consider the fact that if you have a healthcare related document that doesn't reference HIPAA, that document probably isn't going to work properly. And so it's not always just about who is named, but how has the law changed. Another example, in Florida, the power of attorney, financial power of attorney law changed a few years ago substantially. And so some of the powers, in order for those powers to be effective, as listed in a power of attorney, they have to be specifically initialed. If they're not initialed, they're not effective. And so a power of attorney from before that may not work the way that you want it to. So I think it's always a good idea to not only check to see who's been named, but also check with the attorney and make sure that if there are some legal changes, that you bring the documents up to date from that perspective. And Annalie, you're right. The most common situation for me in my practice is that someone has moved from a northern state to where I practice most of the time in Naples. I personally, even though I have an office in Indianapolis and in Naples, I'm in Naples most of the time. And that's just because so many of my clients kept retiring and moving to Naples or to Southwest Florida. And the ones that didn't move to Southwest Florida probably moved to more central Florida, like Sarasota, Tampa area. It's just, that's where the Midwesterners go typically. But regardless, people when they retire oftentimes want to move to another state. So you see that all the time. The people who have a well done Michigan estate plan, but they haven't reviewed it since they changed their domicile to Florida or to Arizona or to Texas or to someplace warmer. And the best answer that I can give you about that is that typically, as long as your documents were effective and valid in the state where they were originally signed, those documents are valid documents. Doesn't mean that they won't be interpreted properly or that they will be interpreted properly. Essentially, a document that is signed in Michigan, as our example, that was valid when signed, remains valid even when you move to another state. But very often, it will be interpreted based upon the new state's law. So that can be a problem. So let me just give you an example of that. An Indiana will that names my client's CPA to be the personal representative of the will. That was perfectly valid when signed in Indiana. That makes perfect sense. He thinks everything's all set. The problem is, under Florida law, while that will is valid, the person who's been named personal representative must either be a relative or must be a resident of the state of Florida. So while the will is valid, it's not going to work the way it was intended because that CPA can't actually serve. And so
Mhm.
a lot of times there's just find little things like that, find differences between the states that can really cause a big problem if you don't plan ahead and if you don't actually check those documents when you get to your new state. So I always recommend that when people change their domicile, one of the things that is on my list of things to do when you change domicile is to sit down with an attorney in that new state to review the documents and to make sure they're updated based upon the new state's law.
Very good. Very good. What is your website in case they just want to go through your website contact page?
Sure. Yeah, we have more information there. You can even set up an appointment and all of those types of things there. We have some videos there as well. The website address is www.galbraith.law. So let me spell that for you. It's Galbraith, GALBRAITH.law. So it's not .com, it's .law.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, very good. I really appreciate you being our CareRight guest speaker today on our Zoom meeting.
Absolutely.
I appreciate your time and your expertise. You know, one thing that I see with people when they call me to, you know, find out about CareRight services is that they don't always appreciate the value of paying a professional to do it right, to do things how they should be done, and that's the right way.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of people will try to do all this planning on their own, and then they get in a real jam, and then they have to hire you, and it costs twice as much to undo what they thought that they knew.
Yeah, exactly.
I have that experience quite often. So
yeah, I don't see that as often, just because probably the people who get to me are coming to me upon an initial recommendation from someone like you. You're probably the one who uncovers the people who should have been talking to me and have not. But yeah, I think that's a real issue these days with LegalZoom and all of these things out there where you're told it can be easy and fast. That's not necessarily always incorrect, but again, if you have at all a complicated situation, if you have healthcare concerns, if you have a significant estate, if you have tax concerns, if you own your own business, if you're in a second marriage, if you have children who if they were to inherit assets might make some real mistakes and need some guidance, those are all perfect situations where an advisor is going to be worth every penny.
For sure. For sure. Very good. Is there anything else you would like to add today?
I think the only other thing that I would add is since I met you a while back, I've had the pleasure of, or maybe not the pleasure, I've had opportunity to refer some clients to you in some situations that were difficult, in some situations where, once again, they probably should have planned a year or two or three or 10 before the situation arose. And I can only say that my clients rave about the services that you've provided. So I really appreciate what you've done for some of my clients, and I know that they have specifically reached out to me. And I'll tell you, that's unusual in this world. When I make referrals, most of the time I just don't really hear much back. The person does a fine job, but I don't necessarily hear a report back. In your situation, I've actually gotten calls and emails from clients saying, you know, Brad, thank you so much for referring us to Anna Lee, because she's made all the difference. So thank you on behalf of my clients.
Well, thank you. And thank you for trusting me with your clients as well. And, you know, it does. It takes a village with all of our areas of expertise to help make sure these families are on the right track with all of their planning. So thank you for the compliment. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Glad to do it.
Very good. Well, good. Well, I appreciate your time today. And, you know, we'll be in touch soon as this video gets edited.
Great.
Then I'll send you the link, and then you can do whatever you want to with it on your end too.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll distribute it through our blog and that kind of thing as well.
Yeah, yep, that sounds good. Sounds good. So, well, very good. Thank you again, Brad, for your time and for your referrals with your families as well. I appreciate that.
Sounds great.
All right. Well, you have a good rest of your week. Okay.
Okay. Thanks. You too.
All right. Take care. Bye.